right, very quickly talk about Palestine. The latest development is the president of Palestine has requested the UN for statehood in Israel. So what could it mean for the Middle East and the overall peace process?
Well, I think unilaterally going to the UN and not having direct negotiations with Israel is a is a very bad move, because you have to talk to each other. You can't bypass the two powers, the United States and Israel, because you know they're going to vote against you. That's the main problem. You have to directly talk to each other and say, how are we going to go about this problem? Because they've been trying to do this since the end of World War II. And you know, the whole issue is the 1967 borders. A lot of people, including President Obama, has said that we need to go back to the 1967 borders as a starting point. But how many people actually know what that means? Because that would mean that Israel would have to give up East Jerusalem, which is where all their holy sites are. And that's not going to happen. Right. It would also include Jerusalem becoming an international city, which would mean that the city would be the capital of both Israel and Palestine. And how many problems would that create?
Do you think they'll get it?
Going to the UN, no. They have to do it together. And it's also important that the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas has to denounce Hamas and their 1988 charter, which calls for the destruction of Israel. How can you work with an organization who wants to destroy a state? Until Hamas denounces their charter, they can't be worked with.
All right, Kenny, could this affect the U.S. support for Israel?
It could go either way. I mean, right now they're obviously on Israel's side. They don't want to give up Palestine, but I mean, they're going to go into the UN. They're going to ask for statehood and really see where the majority goes. I think that's where America's going to go.
But they would only get observer status because the Security Council is going to veto it with the United States. So they're going to go to the General Assembly and become an observer state.
And Professor, I think we can relate this back to social media and using a topic like this on social media. This is bad. You're still calling this bad if you want to communicate with one another on let's say something news like this and breaking news. You're still saying that that's negative.
I hope I haven't characterized social media as negative.
Just not in favor of it.
But I think that social media, as I say, is becoming more complex, and the business model of Facebook is not what young people think they signed up for, as it is evolving. There's no question about that. And whether or not the latest changes that Facebook is making in terms of publicizing pretty much everything that you do from a marketing perspective. I'm listening to Jay-Z, I'm watching this movie as the world's largest data upload voluntarily made by young people on behalf of marketers is quite remarkable to those of us who think that privacy is an important thing to be preserved just on principle. But I don't think that has much to do with Palestine. I think that the issues Kenny and Chris addressed some of the major issues with Palestine, the fact that it's got a long history and that the parties have been intransigent in the past. Those are very important points. As far as how the internet plays into this is simply to say that we live in a much more transparent time than we've ever had in the past. So we've got more access to more information about these issues more quickly. I'm not sure that that necessarily makes it easier. You could even say that it made it more complicated because people have a lot more data than we've ever had before. I can say that I don't think mainstream media, whether you're talking about the major paper or televised media, are covering what's going on in the Middle East in anything more than a cursory fashion. And we may perhaps even being maybe even self-censored for purposes of respecting the United States interest and national security, which are important issues, but they don't necessarily lend themselves to transparency.
Right. Okay. Just quickly, which was immediate news this week, was Governor Chris Christie, who went out to the Ronald Reagan Library. Just quickly, Chris, did he sound like a presidential candidate?
I didn't watch the entire speech, but the fact that he did go to the Reagan Library would suggest, and made a big speech, would suggest that he is running. But
He didn't only go to California. He went to a couple of other states too. He almost
right, he
went on
has.
the tour.
But he said time and time again, and he's been very adamant about this, that he's not running. I personally don't believe he's running because he's only been in office for about 2 years. I would say if he does jump into any race, it would be in 2016. Give him some more time to be governor. He doesn't have enough of a base nationally. He's got a pretty big following here on the East Coast, not nationally. If you ask me right now, I say he's not running.
What do you think about his health issues, Chris?
That was
His
just gonna
weight?
ask that.
No,
His
yeah,
weight.
he apparently had a major health event that.
He had an
I remember
asthma
that
attack over the
a
summer.
couple months ago.
But actually, I think one of the big deals is that he is overweight, and
Is that it?
Yeah, it's because he's overweight, and people say that would you want a president that was fat?
well, we've had one, William Howard Taft.
Well, that's back before
Yes.
people even knew what the presidents looked
He
like.
was a big guy, and he was also the
Yeah, he was.
Chief Justice of the
nobody
Supreme
knew,
Court.
Nobody knew what he looked like, though. I mean,
Yeah.
once
That's
JFK
a
was
key point.
actually probably the first candidate, people
Yeah.
looked at him and said, "Wow, he's a good-looking guy. He's going to get my
It
vote."
really looks has a lot to do with it.
You know, it's interesting, Kenny, that you would bring that point up, because I'm just reading right now a book written in 1984 by Neil Postman called "Amusing Ourselves to Death." And in 1984, who was president? Ronald Reagan. And who was Ronald Reagan? A really good-looking movie actor. And Reagan said, President Reagan said, that politics had become show business. And I think that the question that you're asking, Richard, is actually a legitimate one, because Postman actually, I think, mentions Taft in this book.
Does he?
And he says exactly, Kenny, what you said. I'm really impressed with you two guys, which is that back then you didn't have to be good looking. There's a new book out on Sarah Palin by kind of a troublemaker guy, but who became famous, named McGinnis, who wrote a book called The Selling of the President. I think that was his book. And McGinnis was a supporter of RFK, Robert Kennedy. And Kennedy, the anecdote goes, when he was in a parade, saw McGinnis in the crowd and said, "Come on, get in the car with me. I want you to see what it looks like from where I'm sitting." And Kennedy said, "They're not interested in the issues. They think I'm good looking."
Which, probably very true.
But when it comes, like right now, in this economic downturn, we have several wars overseas, possibly more on the horizon. I don't know if people will actually look at him and say, "Oh, hey, he's too fat, I'm not going to vote for him." I'm going to give more faith to the American people and say, I like his policies, whatever they may be, whenever he announces them, I'm going to vote for him. We know he's a big, drastic cutter of spending. He's not really pro-union. We know what some of his issues are. I don't know if his look is really going to play that big a role. It might be, but...
The same goes with candidates who are aged. I mean, people look at them and say, "Well, I don't want to elect an 88-year-old man," because in 2 years he's out, and then we have, something new going on. It's just, but looks as much as it doesn't play a gigantic role, it plays kind of a subconscious role.
It did, but it didn't have a factor in 2008.
Who will Christie run with?
Who would Christie run with? I think Marco Rubio of Florida. Donald Trump, no, I would abandon the Republican Party. I think Marco Rubio is a rising star in the Republican Party. He's a fabulous orator. He's got some great ideas. I think he is going to be a candidate in the future.
Hispanic vote?
I think so. Rand Paul also in Kentucky. Not Kentucky.
Yeah, in Texas. Is that where he is?
One of those states.
Yeah. No, he is Kentucky with Mitch McConnell, right, okay.
Oh yeah, Rand Paul in Kentucky, sorry.
Ron Paul is Texas.
Yeah, I was thinking his father, right.
But I think he's going to make a fine candidate one day, too.
Okay. Just going based, and I like to ask this at the end of our shows, if there is a candidate out there right now that you're looking at, I don't know if I'll ask this to you, Professor Cuddy, but if you're looking at the race right now, I think you said Rick Perry the last time. Do you still stand by Rick Perry?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
After 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I like the
I don't know if
idea.
you gave me an answer the last
No,
time.
I didn't like I like the idea of Rick Perry, but every time I see the debates, he doesn't seem like he has command of the issues. He stumbles.
It's very sad.
And when you look at Mitt Romney, he just seems to have more command of the issues. He seems more confident up there. I like him thus far.
He's your everyday Republican candidate.
I think it's a weak candidacy or group altogether, but I think if I had to choose one, it would be Mitt Romney. And I think his Perry scare tactics aren't going to work.
Okay. Thank you to our panel. You were great. And you can follow Professor Cundy at David Cundy on Twitter.
Yes.
Just go. Go get a Twitter account. That'll do it for us. We hope to see you right back here next week, everybody. Bye-bye.